Hello, welcome to Understory. In this particular episode, we're going to focus on the culture wars, the attack on moral absolutes and the demise of the values and ethics that have made our countries great. When I say our countries, Western countries around the world, and in particular Australia, where we're seeing attacks in the areas of education, media, government, entertainment, and sport. So what's actually really going on, and what can we do about it? Join us now as we dig into a few topics and see where we can go as people with Judeo-Christian values to push back. Joining me today is Nick. Hi Nick.
Thank you.
We're here today to talk about and focus on the culture wars and how it's impacting and affecting Australians, and try and understand where it's actually expressing itself and what we might do about it. And towards the end of our little session today, actually talk about a little bit of hope, because some people right now are feeling a bit dispirited and overwhelmed almost because they see it happening, busting out everywhere. So, in media and government, education, and, and this is a long, hard battle. It's been going on for some time.
I agree. And a number of people I've spoken to just over the last few weeks have said it's all getting too much. So a lot of the things they're seeing happening in society, everything's changing very quickly.
Very fast.
They don't feel comfortable with it, but it's also just too much for them to keep an eye on the big picture and the local picture. A lot of people are just saying, look, I just need to tune it out.
And especially those people who have just woken up, so to speak, and they're kind of going, what the heck is going on? They're starting to see things in the classroom and in government and media, especially entertainment. And we're just going to talk about a few of those things, not drill into them too much, but just to flag them. And there's a central theme here, which is an attack on moral absolutes. The Judeo-Christian values and ethics which have made this country great are definitely under threat. And we need people in every sphere of society, not just government, but in entertainment, media, and so on, to actually step forward and actually represent those values. So, one of the things I just noticed, and you would have seen, is the censorship push in Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and also in the US. Last week, Barack Obama gave an address at Stanford University where he was calling for the First Amendment to apply only for the big tech companies, but not for the average citizen, which is an extraordinary statement from an ex-president, basically saying we've misunderstood the point and the purpose of the First Amendment, which is the free speech First Amendment, right? Yeah. And you really shouldn't be able to talk about whatever you want to talk about. But the big tech guys, they're not controlled or constrained by that because they're big tech. So, how do you see that? I read that and I was amazed.
It's been a growing argument, this idea that ideas can be harmful and ideas can have victims. And if an idea can have a victim, then of course you need to be able to confront that idea. To some extent, I agree. Things like pornography on television during daytime, things like that.
And that's how it's sold. That's how they're selling it in the UK with the online safety bill. That's how it's packaged. And they're now saying harmful and illegal content. But the question is, as we talked about before, who defines harmful? And that can move over time.
That's right.
For Obama and his guys to say, no, you can't have free speech. Why would they want to do that? Why would they want to control what people say? This is the point of these culture wars. Which brings us to Mr. Musk, your friend Mr. Musk.
Well, that's right. And so I guess the point of this is that the culture wars are being fought and there's some rays of hope. So I felt hopeful a few weeks ago when Elon Musk bought 9.7% of the shares of Twitter, which is a very large portion in terms of having some control, and then was going to be put on the board, and then obviously he's actually ramped that up.
Well, he declined the board position, and now he's raised $45 billion, and from the big end of town as well, which tells you that they think there's an opportunity here. They're interested in the money. But the left is melting down about this. They've said, how dare a wealthy guy own media, and yet they said nothing. In fact, they celebrated, nothing negative, they celebrated when Mr. Bezos bought Washington Post.
Exactly, so it's not consistent.
Right.
And it's ironic that what they're saying is, we can't afford to have someone who is so wealthy having control.
And this is the same point as Obama. If I want to hear your voice, you have freedom of speech, but if I don't, if you don't, then
that's right.
you're out of the game. And there is no consistency. And this is the lesson number one in the culture wars. There is no consistency from the left when they apply, like in this situation with the media. And if you're looking for logic, if you're looking for consistency, you won't find it. These people are religious zealots, and they're becoming more and more delusional. I saw Jen Paxi, the White House spokesperson, had a bit of a cry the other day about the transgender issue in the classroom. How dare parents want to actually control what happens to, or have a say, not even control, and be aware of what happens to their kids in the classroom in terms of, sexual identity and sexual conditioning. And she said, it makes me so upset, I cry. I mean, I read that, I thought, are you serious? Do you really think that? Well, clearly she does. Yeah. And this is what's happening. So
it's a deeply held belief. And it's an inverted moral, because if you were going to cry about something, I mean, I would say, what about the young children who, 9 or 10 years old, get this idea that they could be...
Well, how about crying about the people who have been trafficked over the Mexican border? How about crying about that? They've completely ignored. This is what I mean, no consistency,
about
right?
all the drugs that are pouring into the country.
And when we talk about moral absolutes, we're talking about moving to relativism, situational ethics, where the boundaries and the borders, literally the borders in this case, the Mexican-US border, can be opened and weakened, and things move and shift around, and so these people are taking us, they think, towards some sort of ideological utopia, but in fact, as you know, it's leading us nowhere, on the road to nowhere. The old Talking Heads song.
It's a freedom argument that goes full circle, because they're talking about freedom from moral absolutes, freedom from law, freedom from any restrictions, freedom from even
you're not free.
Even the boundaries of your own biology, freedom from even the thing that every cell in your body says, what you are, freedom from even the very character of what you are. And yet, in the name of that freedom, wanting to be able to do anything, the one thing you can't do is have absolutes. Well, then they want to, in the name of freedom, they're wanting to silence people who express anything that goes against that idea, that moral relativism.
Which brings us to the area of entertainment. So the point is, we can get lost in the weeds talking about whatever specific topic of the day or the week, which is fatiguing to people as they dig into it and go down the rabbit hole. But look at entertainment. We've got Disney, CNN Plus, which has just failed after a month. We've got Netflix, which has lost around about 25% of its share value. And in the Disney case, Mr. DeSantis is representing the people of Florida who they've invested in Disney, because they have their location there. And they're actually saying, you've breached your fiduciary duties and we're coming after you. So this is not playing out for these big guys, because they've gone down this woke agenda, woke entertainment. Netflix has a show called He's Expecting, which is a Japanese program. Can't wait to see that. So this is actually starting to play out economically, and people are starting to say, I'm not buying that product, I'm not supporting that company. And so the culture wars has been fought in the boardroom with with woke agendas and ESG and so on. And now people, the quiet conservatives, are waking up and they're saying, you know what? I don't like this. I don't want you in my classroom. I don't want you in my boardroom. You're actually trying to undermine the very culture in which I live.
And I don't think it's just quiet conservatives. It's people who wouldn't call themselves conservatives.
Absolutely.
They've never really had any particularly political leaning that way, but they have a sense that something has gone too far. And something they even maybe supported it, maybe liked the idea of freedom to be what you want.
I've spoken to people in the last week or so, those sort of people who are saying, what the heck is going on? I mean, like, these are not Christians and they're not conservatives, as you say. They're people, they're everyday people, and this is the real problem for this super woke left, because as people start to realise that their very lives and values are being undermined and eroded, they start to get nervous, and the threat becomes real and present. You know, and I just said the word absolutely a moment ago, and the reason people say absolutely a lot is because everything feels so relative, and people are trying to define it. They're grasping for absolutes, because the absolutes are being taken away, boy, girl, and so on. But kill, steal, those sort of things, and I mean, defund the police is a classic example. It's okay to take? Well, it is if you're underprivileged or, disadvantaged. And this is this critical race theory that embeds itself in the very thinking of the culture wars, which is, I'm a marginalised, disadvantaged identity set. You know, I mean, political identity politics is really about putting people into sets of groups, pitting them against each other. So you've got a contest going on, a distracting contest in culture, while you sit in the background and actually pull the levers.
And I think
that's what people need to be aware of.
It is a distraction, and it's a tool that's used because it's convenient to break people into categories and groups and tell each group that there's some criteria of which they're an oppressor or oppressed. And then it becomes something that becomes a confirmation bias. You know, you walk through life. Of course, life is difficult for everyone in a variety of different ways. So
it's more difficult for me than you. You know,
well, undoubtedly it is, because
there's a group in LA who are called GLAAD, GLAAD, and they exist to encourage LGBTQ people into the arts and entertainment, scriptwriters, actors, and so on.
Characters in particular as well.
And they also, but they're really, and they declare it, they really are a social activist group to get more LGBTQ roles into live action and animated productions. And with their animated productions, the current audit, I think it's their audit, someone's done the audit, I saw the stats, 23%. 23% of characters now in animated TV product for children have LGBTQ characters. The current ratio is around about 4 to 5%
in the
tops.
real world.
And they're not happy with 23, so it's not about equity representation. There is no consistency again.
Yeah,
there is no
not
logic.
about representing, it's about transforming.
It's all about love, right? It's the same thing, right? So
move society.
This is a political agenda, but it's more than that. There is a religious zeal to this, and it's now starting to impinge and trespass on the everyday, which is the point we made before. And you know, these
and people are being increasingly, I think, disturbed by it and feeling, something is being destroyed, something's being eroded, whether they can put their finger on it. And I think that underneath it all, it comes down to simply truth and falsehood.
Now, it's not political. This is not political anymore. And that's the really interesting thing, because the people who are being stirred by this, you know, it's not about whether they vote Labor or Liberal in this country or whatever. They're going, something's not right, and they may not. In fact, a lot of them don't have a faith, but they're being stirred within themselves because there's some degree of shaking going on within them about what is true. They innately, we are designed to know what is innately true, and as you say, the lies have to work.
Truth rings true.
Truth, and it stands strong, but the lie has to work hard.
Inherently strong. The lie has to work harder. But that is why you see this desperation in the response to some things, like Elon Musk purchasing Twitter. The response really was out of proportion, really desperate. And the desperation was not that he would actually use it to push certain messages, but that he wouldn't use it to stop certain messages. Because you have to be able to control the narrative on all fronts in order to reinforce a lie of that magnitude.
Well, it's happening everywhere, and so the danger is we get caught and trapped in the weeds, you know, of the different issues, and we miss the bigger picture. So let's now talk about the South Australian election that's just gone. Very quickly, talk about that. The Liberal Party, who have just appointed a new leader, are also missing the bigger picture. There were about 900 to 1,000 Conservatives who joined that party after they completely ignored polls of 62, 65% saying they didn't want full-term abortion. They got a backlash. A lot of those people would have voted, say, Family First or whatever, and give their preferences to Labor, which allowed the Liberal Party to lose that election convincingly. They were quite, you know, they performed very well in that regard, losing by 7 or 8 seats in the lower house. Having said that, they lost and they recognise that. Now the new leader, David Spears, is saying, well, we don't need any more people like that in the party. So the very people who gave them a speeding ticket at the polls, he's now saying we don't want any more. I mean, it's like when you read that, and we'll put the words on screen. When we read that, say, have you not learnt anything? Do you not actually see the big picture here? This is a time to actually reach back to people of ethics and values, whether they're Christian or not. It doesn't matter what their faith is. The point is the ethics and the values that made the Liberal Party what it was are slowly being corroded by the so-called moderates. And I understand he's appealing to his moderate faction.
I kind of understood what he said, and that in the reality of politics, any major party in Australia does have to be a broad church, because to be a major party, to be trying to represent approaching 50%, that does mean internal, not compromises necessarily, but negotiations. But having said that, I think his mindset was not right. It's got to be about what is the right thing to do for the issues and fighting for the right thing to do.
Well, I've spoken to some people the last few days about this, and they are inflamed by his comments, and so they were inflamed by the ignorance of the ignoring of their wishes around the full-term abortion. They were shut out by the leadership, or they tried to shut them out from joining, and now, having lost the election, they're saying, we don't want you, any more of you people in this party. I mean, this is just a little bit silly.
And I understand, and it was frustrating for a lot of people. I would say still give it time, and take the win.
I agree.
Take the win, because I think that on the whole, it was good that
let's see how the
David Spears was appointed leader.
Well, he'll prove in the process.
We will see how it goes, but I do think that. Certainly among conservatives and among people who are concerned about these things, concerned about all of the people who are having influence on our children, on the next generation, and on our society, and on the media, and on the overall narrative.
But the reason it's concerning, and we'll move on to the federal election now, but is that people are reaching to those sort of new leadership and saying, can you stand for us? Like
we want warriors.
Like DeSantis in Florida, who's taking on Disney to represent the financial interests of his state.
And where's Australia's Florida?
And where's Australia's DeSantis?
Where's Australia's DeSantis? And I think, so moving to the federal election, that is a concern people have, because there's obviously a range of different issues that are going to be relevant to people in the next period, whoever wins, Labor or Liberal. I think it is pretty fair to say that Conservatives are more concerned that Labor would win at the federal election, because there's a lot of things that we know Labor would be more inclined to do than Liberal. But even if Liberal wins, we feel, where's the warriors? Well,
one of them is
got awareness.
One of them is perhaps Katherine Deves for the seat of Warringah. Right. Now the left has gone after her big time. Why? She must be some sort of threat, because they're really trying to take her down before the election.
Right, and she's standing
for things that she said in the past.
And she's not standing on an obscure issue or a particularly controversial issue. In fact, it's a very simple issue of biological men competing in women's sports and having an unfair advantage. And she chose to campaign on that in the past. She cares about the issue. It's not actually a complicated issue, but the way the media have represented it has been somewhat out of control, talking about, well, even women in sport don't care about this issue because they took some poll somewhere. Who cares what the majority of a thing think? Is it right or wrong?
Well, this goes back to the point before about the culture wars. Whether people think it's right or wrong in some sort of straw poll vote, the point is, on a moral absolute, it's not right. And so if we take straw polls all the time, we shift and we move around, and that's the whole point of the culture wars. If I can influence what you can say or not say using controls and censorship and whatever, then I can shift the narrative. I can adjust the dial on the straw polls, and then I can say, and the Democrats in the US are brilliant at this. And it started in Colorado, by the way. There's a book on that. Read that. It started by saying, if we understand that we can move the dial through media, move the dial through entertainment, move the dial through social activism, then what we can do is we can say, well, the electorate now thinks this, and then the elected official or the candidate can say, I'm only doing what the people want. So this is an orchestrated, choreographed, well-planned, Saul Alinsky type program, and the quiet Australian in this country is just starting to wake up to what's really going on. It's an assault on a 360-degree profile, and we need to be in the game, whether you're in education, whether you're in entertainment, whether you're in media, whether you're in business, whether you're a community player, local council, sports clubs. We need to get engaged, and this is the hope, Nick, because we understand there's a contest, and at the moment we're losing the battle, or losing some of the battles. But we will win the war, and there is a shift and there is a turn. The fact that CNN Plus failed, the fact that Netflix has lost money, people are starting to say, no, they're voting with their wallets, they're voting with their feet. That's the way to turn this around.
And there's a lot of individuals who, within whatever sphere of influence, we don't all have the same as Elon Musk, where we can wield billions of dollars and shake things up in that way, but we all have our own little spheres of influence.
Yes, correct.
And I guess that's There are probably 2 points of hope for me at the end. One is spotting the wins. There are some good things happening. I think one point of hope, I would say, is for the individual to realise that there's the forest and there's the trees.
Yeah.
And you've got individuals who you will have interactions with, and you can help to understand the world, especially if you yourself make sure that you have a good understanding of truth.
Yeah.
And that you're not self-censoring.
And to help others too.
Yeah,
and to help
that's
others
right.
navigate. I mean, a lot of people
And
here.
when they're awakened to that the confusion of the lack of moral absolutes, with we're just drifting around and we're not grounded even to basic biology anymore.
The problem with cultural Marxism is that, it takes us to this utopia that we talked about, but it actually takes us nowhere. It's nihilism, and as we move towards that, people start to feel this vacuum and this void, and they go, "There's nothing there," and there is no hope, and there is no bright future. And if you're a victimised minority group going through life feeling like you're a victim and that you're hard done by, nothing's good. And so everything's a contest, everything's a struggle.
And there's no redemption.
And there's no redemption, and there's no hope.
See that with the cancel warriors and the cancel culture and the keyboard warriors. There's no notion of forgiveness.
So this is this is not good for our culture, and mental health and all those things start to play around that. So what we have to do is we have to step into the village square. We have to step into the arguments and the debates. We have to help people understand what's really going on. And this is not about separation of church and state. This is way past a political conversation. This is an ideological worldview conversation. And behind these groups who are looking to unpick, if that's the word, parts of our society and culture is a very strong driving force. And that's what I find most intriguing at the moment, is that people are starting to realise, people who have not been near a church for 100 years, they're saying something doesn't smell right. And they're correct. It doesn't smell right. And they're starting to look through the issue and say, what's the motivation for them to do this? Because if you want 23% of characters, representing that group of people, when in fact the society only has 4 to 5% of that orientation, but you're still not happy. You're not talking about equity. You're not talking about fair. You're talking about actually changing culture. Transformation. And transformation from what to what, right?
Yeah.
And
something that's grounded to something that has no basis and no solidity to it. But that's I guess the second point of hope for me is one of the reasons why the left. We keep saying the left, but we know the left-right spectrum is probably not the right mindset anymore. That march through the institutions, as they called it, media, entertainment, education, government, and
family,
and family on all of those fronts. Part of the reason why they did that is because they see those as the influences, because they think that society is constructed. In a sense that, or that society constructs the individual. We are a product only of, nurture and not nature. And so if they could just change, they think if they pull those levers, they'll change humanity itself. But see, I don't believe that, and Christians don't believe that. We believe there are absolutes. There's biology, there's economics, and there's the way that God created things. There's a way that they work and there's a way they don't work. And so as they try and pull those levers, yes, they have a pretty solid grip on a lot of those institutions, but that doesn't mean they're capable of changing the basics of mankind. No. They're not. And so they will actually divorce themselves more and more from reality. And you'll get this away.
Well, speaking of divorce from reality, the guy who represents WEF, our friend Noah, I call him Noah, who basically said there is no God anymore, and we will actually redesign people and we'll put things in their bodies and we'll track them and all that sort of stuff. I mean, that's the, people have seen those clips. And without giving him too much credence, because I don't think he deserves it, but that's an extreme representation of this kind of thinking. And this is where this drifts. And if you think we're not in a cultural war and this isn't what's going on, then you need to give yourself a slap, because you're not awake. It's happening. It's happening in real time. It's happening all around us in every facet of culture. And people are now alert to it, and we're alert to it. And just a federal election won't solve the issue. We understand that. So we have to get more engaged. So let's track it through on Understory, and there's lots more to talk about, because this is a really dynamic phase of social history, and we'll be tracking it with you. Thanks for joining us today.